Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome back to the Inspiration Theatre for this final presentation of the day at AM Live. Hope you've had a fantastic day. Full halls, plenty of networking to be done after what seems like an age away. It's great to see so many familiar faces again and have that vital catch-up. We've got a fantastic presentation here for you today. It's time for Julia Muir, who will be speaking about the issue of diversity in the sector. For those who felt we had headaches with car supply, shift to agency, electric vehicles, wage inflation, Brexit, there really is another agenda that we really need to push to improve all our businesses, and that's the inclusion of more women in our leadership. It's proven to create more effective businesses, more profitable businesses, and really a far better culture in which to leverage your sales processes. So we've got plenty of people which will be able to talk to you about that. Julia's attracted a panel from across the industry. We've got a panel from including people from the IMI, Keyloop, Motorpoint, and many other suppliers as well, as you can see up here. And Julia will introduce those as we get into the meat of the presentation. So as you can tell, I'm just filling time until the main event. So without further ado, can I welcome to the stage Julia Muir.
I don't need that. No. Thank you. So, hello everybody. Nice to see you. Oh, hello Stuart. Nice to see you all. So I'm Julia Muir. I'm author of Change the Game, and I'm founder of the Automotive 30% Club and Chief Executive of Gaia Innovation. My background is a career spanning 30 years working in automotive retail for an OEM and in consultancy in the UK, Germany and Spain. So in this session, I'm going to explain how the leaders of the Automotive 30% Club are changing the game in the automotive sector and making their organizations a place where women can thrive, and they are reaping the business benefits. I'll be joined by my panel of club patrons and members, and they're going to share what they're doing to increase diverse female representation. So, business leaders are standing on a burning platform. They're facing significant disruption and needing to transform their organizations, and they're competing in a race for skills to attract high-performing people. Excluding a vast proportion of the female half of the population is no longer an option. The Automotive 30% Club is an inclusive leader network, and membership is growing at a fast pace, and they're taking action to establish this sector as employers of choice for diverse women. These inclusive leaders are giving more focus to gender balance and women's inclusion and diversity. So we work to a 30% by 2030 strategy. That means to fill at least 30% of key decision-making or leadership roles with diverse women by 2030. And we collaborate across the sector to share best practice. Here are the members. There are 50 members at the moment. They're all either chief executives or managing directors, and they represent a wide variety of businesses across the automotive value chain. And we'll be announcing another member, actually, later this week. We've also got patron members who help to steer the direction of the club and are strong advocates and ambassadors. They're Christian Elverforce of Volvo Car UK, Tom Kilroy of Keyloop, who's here today, Martin Forbes of Cox Automotive, Catherine Fayers of Auto Trader, Dax Gupta of Marshall Motor Holdings, and Neil Williamson of Jardine Motors Group. One of the key benefits of being in the club is to share best practice and learn from the network how to actually implement change and therefore accelerate the pace. Chief executives and HR directors learn from discussing the challenge and the solutions with all of their peers. It brings energy and commitment to make the internal change necessary and gives it meaning if the business knows that they're part of a much bigger movement. So, why do we need diverse female representation? Business teams with a balance of diverse women and men make better decisions than homogenous ones. leading to superior financial performance. This is due to their different but complementary insight, perspectives, and propensity for risk. With female representation on the board, a McKinsey study found that those companies were 25% more likely to have above average profitability than their peers. And with diverse and female representation, 36% more likely to have above average profitability. This is because of all of these factors. It brings wider perspectives, broader experiences, complementary characteristics based on those different lived experiences, better ethical governance, balanced approach to risk, this broader collective intelligence working together, and effective decision making. So, in this March, my book Change the Game, available in all good bookstores and Amazon, or from me, special mates rate. That was published in March, and in it I explain how we go about doing this, and that we must lay to rest once and for all an allegation that taking action to remove the extra barriers and difficulties that diverse women face is positive discrimination. Because the suggestion that increased female representation could only be achieved through positive discrimination is deeply sexist, because it implies that women don't have the competence and skills to secure the jobs on their own merit. And I wish I'd had £1 for every time someone tries to counter my call to increase female representation with the "I only hire the best person for the job" position, as if a woman would be unlikely to be the best person for the job. So the reality is that those employers that are not even getting to see the best person, if their company has a macho image or a culture in which misogyny, racism, microaggressions, or sexual harassment is rife. You won't attract the best of the female or male talent if you don't have an inclusive culture and 21st century progressive working practices and cultural norms of dignity and respect. The internal change must be driven by both men and women working together to make the company a place where diverse women and men can thrive. So, within the book and within the network, we're working together by putting in place 6 steps to success, 6 steps to create a better gender-balanced, more inclusive business. Step 1, know your data and be accountable for progress. To progress, you need to know where you are and where you need to be. That's why we have our shared aim of 30% by 2030. It's a KPI, it's a benchmark to mark progress against. Many companies, when they join the club, don't even know how many women work in their organisation, never mind women of colour or of disability, in which roles, in which sites. So the first action is to take place, is to collect and then immerse yourself into the people analytics data. Having established the gap between the current situation and the future goal, a plan must be made to get there, owned by the CEO and the senior executive team. Step 2 is to then reach out to new talent pools. Historically, automotive employers have been complacent about which talent pools they fish in, taking a passive role, or picking from whomever chooses to apply to them. But if the sector is currently white men, that's all you will meet using those methods. So our members are engaging with universities and schools to talk to women and girls about careers. They're partnering with organisations like Women Returners or raising awareness of their inclusive credentials through their awards and accreditations. They're sponsoring programmes that help women retrain with skills such as coding and programming. The big nut to crack is mid and late career women coming from other sectors with transferable skills, and recruitment agencies have got to step up their game to help go and find these women. Step 3 is recalibrate for inclusion. So if you're going to make all this effort to attract more women to your business, you need to ensure the norms and working practices don't lead to their exclusion. Many of our members have made huge progress in implementing changes undoubtedly accelerated by the pandemic, such as family-friendly family-friendly policies and working conditions enjoyed for years in other sectors, such as flexible, part-time, remote working, and they've now been adopted on a massive scale. Companies who don't adopt them will face losing valuable staff with expertise who've decided that life is too short to be a slave to the company machine for 60 hours a week. It's been termed the Great Resignation. So progressive policies and practices that focus and measure quality of outputs and productivity, fewer hours, less risky and stressful remuneration, will not only enable businesses to attract and keep women, but also keep hold of many current employees who don't want to go back to old-fashioned ways. Step 4, welcome in the women and recruit equitably. Much progress has been made by our members with regards to removing bias from recruitment. Redacting gender cues from application forms led to a significant increase in the number of women getting past the initial screening stage in one of our major retailers. Insisting on gender-balanced shortlists for external and internal applications leads to more women being selected. Assessing evidenced expertise rather than insisting on irrelevant years of experience and ignoring career breaks and emphasizing customer service and people management skills rather than the need to be a petrol head removes some of the ways that women have been excluded. Step 5, pull women through the pipeline. A key factor to investigate is why companies don't promote women proportionately. If the graduate intake is 50-50 gender balance, as it is in many of the OEMs now, then appointments to the first management rung should logically also be gender balanced. Unfortunately, they're not. And so that signals a problem in the system. When we have a gender-balanced pool of service advisors, but only 6% of after-sales managers are female, there's clearly an issue. Step 6, the final step, is hold on to your investment. Now, a survey by PwC found that the main reasons women left their job were a lack of career progression and unfair pay for their efforts. A phenomenon called prove it again, where women are more likely to be told that they're not ready for a step up, yet their male peer is thought to be ready, is a real issue. This is exacerbated in companies with few senior female managers because it's hard for the promoters to imagine a woman being up to the job without having a much wider wheelbase of proven experience than their male peer. That male peer is standing on the shoulders of all the high-performing white men that went before him. The issue about fair pay is complex. It lies in society undervaluing roles that are traditionally undertaken by women, such as administration, and overvaluing those that have a direct connection to the bottom line, such as sales. Also, women are often expected to do far more non-promotable tasks. These are tasks that they don't get any credit for, and it increases their workload, such as arranging the staff Christmas party, organising the customer open day, taking part in staff committees or volunteering in schools. Women end up overworked yet underpaid. So these tasks should be valued more, allocated more fairly, and women should be given the recognition they deserve for the extra mile they go. Our Inspiring Automotive Women Awards do that. So the final point I want to make in my part of this session is that values create value, and it's important that you leave, as business leaders, you leave a positive, lasting legacy. So building a gender-balanced business is not only the right thing to do for your business, your customers and your employees, but it's also the right thing for society. Perpetuating the status quo in your organization and missing out on the benefits that an inclusive culture brings is not a wise thing to do. Doing nothing to change is not really an option. With power comes responsibility to act. Now, the foreword of my book is written very kindly by Nathan Coe, Chief Executive of FTSE 100 company Auto Trader. Bex is here representing them today. And he says, in the end, it's down to each of us to make a difference in our own teams and organizations. If we take up this challenge, we will not only do our part in creating a fairer and more equal society, but we will create better organizations for our people, customers, and shareholders. Now, Mark Benioff, the Chief Executive of Salesforce, which just happens to be over there and is quite an inspiring leader, also said, "I firmly believe that equality will be the key to unlocking a company's full and sustainable value. That doesn't mean it's easy to achieve, but those who fail to try will be on the wrong side of history. So I urge you all to be on the right side of history and start to change the game." So that's enough from me. Let's hear about some people that are actually putting this great stuff in place. So on our panel here today, we have members from, they are patron members from the club. So we have Tom Kilroy, CEO of Keyloop, Alison Fisher, HR Director of Cox Automotive International, Rebecca Clark, Sales Director of Auto Trader, and also on the panel from other member companies are Hannah Litt, Head of Resourcing and Inclusion from Motorpoint, and Professor Jim Saker, President of the IMI and Professor Emeritus, Loughborough University. Quite a mouthful. So I'm going to start by turning to our three patrons. So I'll begin with Bex, I think, to say, can you tell us a little bit about, first of all, just a key thing that you've put in place in Auto Trader that's made a big difference? And also why you think supporting the Automotive 8% Club is a good thing.
Yep, sure. Afternoon, everyone. I guess just one of the examples of things that we've put in place at Auto Trader would definitely be our networks and guilds. And they are networks which are established by people that work in Auto Trader. Our first one was our women's network that was established in 2016. Followed by an LGBT network, followed by BAME, and then neurodisability, and there are others which have been born since. The reason why I kind of talk to that example more than any, I guess, is because without doubt they have had a massive impact in our organisation and on our organisational culture. They are run by people that are passionate about that area, maybe people that identify with the network or are an absolute passionate ally. And they shape, lead, govern whatever activities it is that they think will make a tangible difference in Auto Trader and in the industry and beyond. And as I say, without doubt, has made a massive impact on culture and how our people feel at work. We definitely strive so that everybody can be their true selves at work, whatever that looks like. And again, the networks have been a real active part of making that happen. I think the reason why we chose to be a member, and we've been a member for several years now, and as you say, a patron for a few years as well, is just because we absolutely care. You mentioned there, Julia, Nathan, our CEO, is absolutely passionate about all areas of diversity and inclusion, and the work of the club just feels very aligned to our values and culture. Everybody that joins the organisation as part of their induction spends a day and a half on a diversity and inclusion course. We're ranked as number 7 in the top 100 UK inclusive companies, and we just care about really making a tangible, genuine difference for people at Auto Trader and within the industry. So it was kind of, why wouldn't we be involved and actively support the club and broader?
Thanks, Bex. So moving on to Tom, when is your next in the row?
Thanks, Julia. I don't know if this is working.
Yeah.
So where to start? So first of all, Julia, you mentioned, start. I've been lucky enough to be able to build a team over the last few months. And in doing that, I set out to do what you suggested, which is hire the best person for the job. And I'm pleased to say that 30% of my own team is women. And they are responsible for our product, people, and our alliances, which obviously includes our relationships with OEMs. So these are enormously important agendas within the organisation. But we also have women running other functions, including marketing, at the next level of managers within the business. So we're trying to make sure that we have visible female leadership in our company, succeeding in doing that. I really believe in what you say about data. It's incredibly important to analyse data on events like promotions, bonuses, pay rises. So we think, so we're working hard on making sure that that's the case across the company. And then just more broadly, we've really pushed towards flexible working, partly as a post-COVID thing. We've all learned that it's possible to work differently. And as a result, we've instituted hybrid working for the whole company, which has gone down really well. And I think, just an example, this summer, we actually gave everybody Fridays off in August, which during the school holidays, actually really helpful for people. They can make up the time, elsewhere. So we're trying to make sure we do that. And then in terms of changing the game in the next generation, we're big supporters of Inspiration for Innovation with the 30% Club. And also we're running our own things like the Dealer Tech with universities, which is all about the next generation of students who are going to be innovators coming into our industry. And so we're trying to do all of those things. So quite a lot going on.
So just to clarify, the Inspiration for Innovation program that Tom mentions that Keyloop are kindly sponsors of, this is where we engage with hundreds of schools across the UK. We send volunteers in from our member organisations, male and female, but we do tend to try to go for as diverse a mix as we can, to position the automotive industry as inclusive, high-tech, advanced technology employers of choice for young people. And it's so important to get that message in when they're young, so that they can start to throw off the shackles of some of the gender stereotypes. And we're very grateful for Keyloop for sponsoring that. Thank you. So moving on to Alison. I don't think it's...
Am I there? Can you hear me?
Yep.
We good to go now?
Yeah.
Can you hear me now?
No. Oh.
I'll stand here with it. Can you hear me now? No.
Yeah, I'll move on to Hannah, and then we'll...
I'm quite loud.
Well, you
okay.
can shout if you think.
Oh, it's suddenly working.
You're on.
Okay. Oh, we're okay. Okay. Technical glitch. So, Cox Automotive, we've been on our journey for the last 6 years now. I joined the automotive industry 6 years ago and thought I'd step back in time, being really honest. The only female in the room. I see, John, you're laughing because you know what I'm talking about. But I was the only female in the room. And I felt we needed to change. So, a bit like Bex talked about at Auto Trader, we have our Women We Drive network. It's a really inclusive network, not just for women, it's also for the boys as well, because what's really important for me is you have your male allies in the room. So if you take nothing from today, it's about engaging both men and women in the conversation. It's about men listening to the conversations that we're having and how they can best support other women within their business and their sector and share their stories, which is what Women We Drive is all about. Also, from a data perspective, we've gone from 16% female managers to nearly 30% in the last 6 years because we track the data. And that's because, for me, the biggest learning is about culture change. You don't do this on its own. Diversity isn't a standalone initiative. It has to be the culture of your organisation. There's no point bringing in lots of women into your organisation if the culture doesn't support those women to thrive and be successful. So for me, it has to be hardwired into absolutely everything you do, from where you attract people from, how you hire them, how you develop them, how you promote them, how you share their stories. It has to be in absolutely every single thing that you do. And so why have we become patrons? I think we felt we'd gone as far as we could on our own. Our Women We Drive network have been hugely supportive, but we have a lot to learn. We haven't got it perfect in Cox Automotive, but where there is a will, there's certainly the desire and to want to make the change. And for me, it's about stop talking about things and we need to take action, which is why we've become patrons of the 30% Club.
Thanks, Alison. So absolutely, we're an action-oriented network, and the power of a network is in the strength between the nodes. So one of the things that we try to do as a network is to engage between each other. You don't all have to just turn up at meetings that I've centrally organised. It's about talking to each other and sharing what works and sharing solutions. And the point that you made about this being this is for men and women, and it's so essential that men understand that to be an effective leader and to be successful now, you have to be an inclusive leader and understand the challenges that the whole variety of different employees face in your organization. So moving on to Hannah, and from Motorpoint, who I've been so impressed with in terms of the whole diversity of women and, you know, your whole diversity and inclusion strategy, really. I think we're better having the... We'll use the handheld. Thanks.
Can everybody? Yeah, that's better. So, good afternoon, everyone. So, we went back into basics mode completely, quite similar to Alison, actually, and we looked at our data, and actually, for us, it was a real cultural shift, actually. It was about really understanding what the barriers were, not just from a gender perspective, but from the real intersections of women in our organisation. So it was about really going back to basics and having the conversations down on the ground. So we spent a lot of time doing that to understand really what the barriers are. And the actions that we've taken have been around our recruitment process. So we've anonymised our recruitment process and really looking at the data to understand where the barriers are, actually. Not just for women, but actually the various intersections for women across our organisation, because not every woman will have the same barriers. So we've done a lot of work, and we're not there by any means. We're on a real journey, and it's going to take us a while. It is, and I think it's really understanding where those talent is coming from, and really widening that funnel, I think, and looking at the next generation as well. It's making sure that we're looking at grassroots, and that's, I think, where the Automotive 30% Club comes in, because we can't do it as one organisation on our own. This is really as a collective, as an industry. We really have to work together as an industry to really break down those stereotypes, break down those barriers, and we've got to do it as a collective together. Every single one of us really has to take ownership of that. So we have looked at our recruitment process. Also, we've looked at all the various intersections. We've looked at neurodiversity as well from a recruitment perspective, but we've also looked at it from a learning and development perspective. We looked at it from a policy perspective. We've now introduced part-time working, flexible working. We've looked at, obviously, our gender pay gap. We've looked at, and we've really just tried to understand it from the people we've got in the business as well, but we've also tried to understand what's great about us as well. What do we need to be telling people that is great about us from a gender perspective, and how do we shout about this stuff? Because sometimes we're not good about telling our story that is great, because there is some great stuff about us as a business, but as an industry as well, that maybe we don't tell people about. So in terms of the Automotive 30% Club, it's been really great to just share ideas, share best practice, and, you know, everybody that's here on the panel is part of the reason why we are part of the Automotive 30% Club. Just being able to know that actually we're not doing it on our own, and, you know, sometimes a problem shared is a problem halved as well. So that's a massive reason as well.
Thanks, Hannah. And just kind of picking up on the point of, you know, our target, our aim, our KPI is 30% of leadership roles to be filled by diverse women by 2030. And just kind of segueing along now to Jim about what the IMI are doing with regards to their diversity and inclusion agenda.
Yeah. Can you hear me? No.
Advanced technology sector.
Thanks very much indeed. Basically, what's happened is that I've supported Julia in the 30% Club for a number of years, you know, since it first started. But a little while back, I wrote an article in AM which said that we needed to have a more diverse and equitable and inclusive sector, an industry. Now, being a university academic, I write things, so I wrote it in AM, all very, very well. And then somebody wrote back to me and said, it's not good writing about it, do something about it. Why don't you actually do some action? So at the IMI, we've started a task force, which started in last March, to look at 3 areas, 3 working groups. One is gender, which is being worked with Julia and the 30% Club and Linda Jackson from Peugeot. They're leading an initiative looking at gender and how we can, gender and sexuality, and how that can be addressed within the industry. We're also looking at race and ethnicity within the sector as well. It's something which has been neglected. There's issues of racism within the sector. Some of the things which are put forward have a kind of racial bias, which are problematic. So we're looking and addressing that. We're also looking at the issue of disability, both visible and non-visible, because that is an issue that, again, has not been fully addressed. And so we're trying to draw from people and their experiences in how we can make the sector as a whole more inclusive from both gender, race and disability. An interesting example, there's a partially sighted guy that we taught at Loughborough, and he is in the industry. And he said, but why is it that every application form in our industry requires a clean driving licence when actually my job will never involve me driving? And this gentleman is now a manager in Northern Ireland, but he said, I had to fight to get past the first application because I could not tick clean driving licence. And there's so many different levels at which this operates. We need to be more inclusive, we need to be more open, and therefore I totally support the 30% Club in what it's doing, especially on the getting women into leadership. And that leadership tends to be more inclusive by nature, and as a result, we end up potentially with a way of trying to solve the employment crisis that we face in our sector. So the role of the IMI is basically we're reporting in March. We're trying to, there's a lesson I learned very early on. One of the other things I do is I chair the Women's Professional Basketball League in the UK. Horrendously difficult to get a sponsor, but no, never mind. But basically what happened was that I said to my daughter, I said, you know, part of my role is to give black women a voice. And she then turned to me and said, don't be so patronising. They already have a voice. It's your job to amplify it. And therefore, what we're trying to do at the IMI for both the issue of women, disability and race is to amplify the voice within our sector to make it better.
Well said, Jim. Thank you very much. So I hope that the overriding message that you've heard today is that this is a business imperative. You know, we're standing on a burning platform here. We're fighting over skills, and yet many businesses in the sector are not helping by they're excluding all this talent accidentally most of the time, not always. So what we're trying to do as a network of CEOs is work together to change that, because if we do, everybody wins. So we've got time for questions now, so don't be shy. Would you like to ask a panel member a question or me? This lady's hand went up first, I think, and then this lady here.
Hello, everybody. How are you today? So thank you very much, Julia, for hosting the session. It's quite informative. I think I'll start off by saying, Hannah, thank you for mentioning the intersectionality that exists when we're talking about diversity in the workplace culture. Because as everybody has noted, it's not just about gender, it's about race, it's about various abilities, and it's also about sexuality. So having that conversation, thank you very much for bringing it on the platform. There was something you mentioned earlier, Julia, that I think I want to put forward to, forgive me, Rebecca and Alison. You'd mentioned that within your institutions you have networks that cater to a cross-section of diverse voices. But something Julia had mentioned was about how in the workplaces a lot of people, a lot of women in particular, are given the certain positions where they're asked to take responsibility for. So the guys that are managing your networks, are they people within the organization that were hired to do this? Are they people within your organization that volunteered to do this? And if so, how are you balancing what they're doing with the work that they're doing, and how are they being rewarded for their actions?
Yep, I don't mind going first. Can you hear?
We need the... Jim, have you got the...
Is it back on? No.
No.
I don't think this one's working. No. Shall I borrow that again? Oh, is it on? Hi, can you hear me now? Yeah, the people that run and lead the networks within Autotrader are volunteers, so they're Autotrader employees who put themselves forward. We have what we call network leads and then network facilitators, so there'll be a couple of leads, for example, on each network, and they will be supported by some facilitators as well, and then obviously there are the broader employees that will get involved in the different groups. I think to your point as well, we do try to make sure that, you mentioned intersectionality, you've called it out there, one white woman does not represent all women, so we try to make sure that, they are real, true, diverse voices within the networks as well. So definitely they're all volunteers, and sorry, there was a second part to your question, but I couldn't quite hear, and I probably can't now, actually. Oh, how are they rewarded? So there's no reward through, let's say, pay. What there is reward through, though, is a voice within the organisation, and there are a few different things that we do. So people that get involved have an opportunity to share the good things that are coming out of the networks with the broader organisation. So we're a FTSE 100 company. With our non-exec board, we have an inclusive group of people that is made up of those people within the networks that on a quarterly basis get the opportunity to spend time with the board about the things that they really care about and they believe we should be doing differently in the organisation. So there's an opportunity to change and to have impact on culture. So it's more the prevailing culture that, as you mentioned, we want to amplify voices and make sure we're representative of the people that work in the business. And just a final thing on that as well to support people is we have our commercial KPIs, as you'd expect. We've just launched this year for the first time some cultural KPIs, which demonstrates we're as serious about percentage of women in the business, percentage of BAME women in the business, and at leadership levels. And they are things that we'll be actively reporting each year as well. So we really want to make sure that we're committed to, the things that we talk about, that we live and breathe, but that we are making tangible results as well.
It's very similar in Cox Automotive as well. We don't have anybody who does that as their full-time job. It's very much people who are committed, who want to make the change are part of that. What's really important to us is that they have that senior level sponsorship as well, because if you need to break through some barriers or some bottlenecks, you've got a senior executive member who sponsors that. And really importantly, actually, it's a guy. So Liam is also one of our patrons. So that's how we do it slightly differently. There's no reward mechanism in place, but one thing's for sure, the ladies who are part of that network and the gentlemen, it's a huge personal development. They have much greater visibility. They present to the board on different topics, different ideas, so it's great for their personal growth and development. And I would say there's a number of people who progressed their career as a result of being part of that resource group from their own personal development perspective, that they probably wouldn't have had those opportunities before, but by being involved and being volunteers, they've certainly benefited from it, and we've benefited hugely from hearing their voices.
It's actually a really good indication of the culture you've got in place, that if, for example, in these two companies, being a member of those networks is seen as a promotable task. It's seen as something that gives you, visibility, recognition. It's valued. In companies where the culture isn't correct or isn't doing this or treating this as an HR initiative, they're invisible. So therefore, they don't get the recognition and the fact that they might get a promotion on the back of the extra work that they're doing. So that's another way to potentially look at it. And so you had a question then there front.
Hi. I've experienced this with various employers. How do you get over the hurdle of collecting the data around gender, sexuality, neurodiversity? is it a case of making people feel comfortable enough to reveal that information? Because you can't represent everybody if you don't know who you're representing. I myself experience some neurodiversity. I've worked in academia, and there's no way that I would have revealed that to them. I feel perfectly comfortable with the employer I'm with now. So how do you overcome those hurdles of getting that data without offending people and without making it feel like such a big thing?
I'll just take this, but I think Bex is probably in one of the best situations to answer that. But it is a real chicken and egg, because you have to have the culture in place of trust for people to reveal who they truly are. So one of the first steps is to make a big point of, we want you to be yourselves at work and not be this profile, macho, strong person that everyone expects you, maybe historically, to be. We want you to be yourselves. And so from that position of trust, it's then easier to get the information. But I think that's why Auto Trader find it quite easier than most, I think, to collect that data.
Yeah, I think it's definitely a result of many different kind of factors at play. I think, again, the prevailing culture, of course, makes a big difference to how people may feel in terms of confidence to share. But the things that we do to try and collect the data, we have, as many organisations, like a central people hub where people can, it's up to them what information they wish to disclose. But we have kind of the opportunity to share as much as the individual wants to, from many of the things you just said, but religion, members of the household, there's lots of different elements of information. And then equally, when we have our, what used to be kind of every 6 months, but at the minute are almost every month, Culture Amp surveys, there's opportunity there again to disclose your personal details, and we use that to then better inform how our people are feeling and perhaps how different groups of people are feeling, and therefore to, again, this is where the networks come in. We will share it, as you would expect, within the leadership team, with the broader leadership teams, but within the networks as well, so that, again, we can say, okay, this is a trend that's coming out, what do we think we could and should do about it? So again, we try therefore to make a tangible difference. But we, as everybody said, it's not perfect by any stretch. Not everybody shares everything, but over time, it's definitely improving as a result of the different things that are happening.
Is that working? Yeah. Can I just reinforce? What you're saying about the culture and what Bex is saying? There's no data on it, but my understanding or the experience we've had is that there are an awful lot of people in our industry who are dyslexic, that actually they're drawn to the sector because basically it's non-academic. It's seen as being literary, you don't have to read and write. But fundamentally, we discovered a salesperson who was severely dyslexic and was having to learn the script completely, the paperwork for FCA, the whole lot, because he wasn't confident in actually reading it. And he was trading off a sale each month to another salesperson to do his paperwork for him. And you're going, this isn't right. If you create a culture where people are open and can be supported, then you get the best out of these people. And it is so much to do with culture.
I think we have a time for another question. Perhaps some of the men in the audience would like to add their voices to the discussion. Silence. Oh, go on. You can speak lower.
Hi, thank you. I really can't do a low voice, so I won't embarrass myself. But what I wanted to ask is, Julia alluded earlier to the importance of promoting our sector as somewhere that is diverse and inclusive. Is there anything that the patrons do in their recruitment branding to really promote that message? Because it's not something I see that's widespread at the moment.
Tom, would you like to answer that?
So Michelle, who leads marketing.
Oh, yes, sorry.
Thanks.
Set one
I
up
think
to you.
it's actually something we need to do more. And there's no question. I mean, I do think it's by example, but also we've got to promote that message more actively. I honestly don't think we do enough, Michelle, is the answer. And we do need to do more. And I think that it's partly about projection of people who are joining the industry. We've got to, it's got to attract people towards it, which means it's got to look welcoming and it's got to look inclusive. But I mean, it's actually, we also need to explain where we're succeeding. So let's tell people where we've got, case studies that we can say, look, we're actually doing better. And now's a great time to join us.
I heard a good story from a member that's about to come on board, which is a big consultancy company. And they told me the story of the reason that had galvanized them into action to join the club was they had been chasing after this very high-profile, high-performing female consultant that they wanted to join them. And she asked them what their maternity policy was. And they looked back, he didn't even know what his maternity policy was, and he realized it was absolutely rubbish. Certainly nothing like what the competitive set were offering. And she turned them down. And she said, it's not just about your maternity policy, because obviously they then tried to say, oh, but we would create one. She says, it was the very fact that you didn't realize that you had to be open and transparent and put this forward on your websites, make a point to women that you're thinking this way. She says, I've got no intention of using a maternity policy for many, many years, but it's what it signals about your business. So they're joining the club because they said, we have a lot to learn about how to project our intentions of wanting to hire a gender balance. We're just falling flat on our faces at the moment. We don't know how to go about it. So that's just a classic example of you really must, market your credentials, but make sure it's authentic, that what's backing it up. I think we have to, maybe one more question and then we have to end. So any observations or statements maybe then, rather than a question? I knew you would. Like, we got one man finally dares.
Yeah, Julie, thank you, Julia. You knew I was sitting here dagging to say something. I want to just say, actually, Julia's been a massive influencer of me as well. She's been a sort of informal mentor of what we've been doing. What I've noticed from my time in the industry is there is a toxic masculinity. There's like a dysfunctional masculinity. And what's refreshing is to see so many progressive employers getting behind what you're doing and what we're doing as well, and trying to address that. But I just wonder, what more do we need to do to get this message out to the thousands of very small employers that are out there that are the archetypal, Fred in the shed, under the arches kind of car dealer, right the way through to the smaller businesses where it is totally male dominated. And I just think, I can see that the dots need to be joined up, but I'm hoping that we're going to get there. I'm not sure it's going to happen in my lifetime, but Jim, you know where I'm coming from with that.
Well, just for everyone else's benefit, if you didn't know, Steve runs a social enterprise that's there to help organisations really get to the grips with mental health, particularly male mental health. I'd like, obviously, Jim to answer it, but can you also come in, Hannah, on this final one?
Yeah, I think, if I just sort of say it, I think this is part of the role that the IMI has got to play, that we engage with a lot of small businesses, and therefore we need to be very much more proactive in the way in which we put this forward. And I think this is part of this role of the task force that I've set up to make sure this happens. But thank you for your support in that particular task force. Thank you.
It's funny that you asked that, because we actually had this conversation earlier. I think it's get comfortable with being uncomfortable, and if you're not feeling discomfort, you're not learning. And I think that's a responsibility to everyone. I always say, if you're learning something, you need to measure your discomfort. And I think that's something we all need to really just sit in your discomfort sometimes, and that's really where you're learning, and that's the journey we all really need to take. And I think sometimes don't expect somebody to sit there and teach you. This isn't the responsibility of females and the various intersections to teach you. There is books out there that you can pick up and read, and do the work yourself. Don't use people's emotional labour. There is plenty of resources out there to go and do the work, and sit in the discomfort, get ready to get uncomfortable, and we have a collective responsibility to the industry to do the work, and the time starts now.
Thanks, Helen. I think the issue that you raised, Steve, as well, is this toxic masculinity, it's a bit of a buzzword really, affects everyone negatively. It clearly affects women negatively, and that's one of the reasons why women kind of come into the organisations and then go out on a kind of revolving door, because they come up against this in the organisations. But it is really badly affecting men. And are we really going to just allow this in a 21st century progressive sector, that kind of behaviour is okay? And some of the things that the leaders of the network are absolutely kind of nailing their colours to the mast about is, particularly those with the name over the door. I don't want my business to be known for that kind of toxicity. I want my business to be known where people enjoy coming to work. It's a happy vibe. Everyone's thriving. They're fulfilling their potential, no matter who they are, no matter what they look like. And therefore, that's really what inclusive leadership is all about. The issue about why we prioritise the gender balance is that, of course, women, being 51% of the population, are massively underrepresented in the industry. Therefore, you have to realise that disproportionately they're underrepresented versus the others. But by going on that journey of becoming more inclusive to women, and the intersectionality that exists within women, because we're not homogenous, we're not identical all the same, sends off this journey then into all sorts of diversity and creates this much more vibrant, thriving culture for a business, which is what we need to overcome the challenges that faces in the next decade or so. So that brings us to an end. So thank you very much, panel. Obviously, we're going to hang around if anyone wants to speak to us, but thanks for your attention.